Ms. Carrie Tan.
Thank you, Chairman, and I'd like to thank MOS Gun for replying. I appreciate MOM in highlighting that low-wage caregivers also get income top-ups through workfare, and I think that is very helpful. In my cut, however, I was calling specifically for attention to look into basic income for full-time stay-home caregivers who were previously from hired in low-wage industries. And by this, I mean a community that has moved from low-wage, literally, to no-wage. I'm not sure whether this group of community is receiving enough attention because they may not fall conveniently within MOM's portfolio, given that they're not in the workforce. And if so, can MOS or someone please share, like, which ministry should we be directing the attention for this community of caregivers to look out for their well-being and their interests, because they do not fall conveniently within a particular portfolio? Appreciate a clarification. Thank you.
The government has strengthened areas of support for caregivers via the Caregiver Support Action Plan that was announced in 2019. Firstly, there is a range of home and community care options to help support the care and social needs of the elderly loved ones when caregivers have to go to work. There are also various respite care options in elder care centres and nursing homes for caregivers who need help with caring for seniors for short periods of time, including during the weekends. Another example is the area of financial support. MOH had introduced a home caregiving grant in October 2019 to help defray the cost of caregiving in the community. This grant provides a $200 payout per month to eligible individuals with permanent moderate disability that can be used to offset the cost of home and community care services, transport expenses to travel for medical appointments, and costs of hiring a foreign domestic worker. Households that need financial assistance for their basic living expenses, including the low-wage stay-home caregivers, can also approach the Social Services Office, which will look into ways to support them. So to answer Ms. Carrie Tan's question, actually it's a whole of government. There are several ministries working together to support caregivers, whether they are full-time caregivers or part-time caregivers. We have the MSF, that looks at home care. We have MOH that looks at supplementing and providing alternative caregiver options. And we have MOM, as well, that looks at CPF support and retirement saving support for caregivers. So I would not say there is a single ministry, but rather, a whole government effort to support caregivers.
Mr. Desmond Chu.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I have two matters for clarification. First of all, I want to thank Minister for acknowledging the work of the labour movement and affirmation of the importance of tripartism. Minister mentioned about the jobs transformation map. This is an important evolution in our transformation journey. Can the Minister update which are these 12 industries or sectors to be in the first phase of this transformation? How many jobs are expected to be impacted, and how can tripartite partners be part of this transformation? Secondly, including private sector search firms to assist in job search for PMEs and help SMEs find workers can be a good and important game changer for Singapore. How does the Minister see the role of such search firms vis-à-vis the current placement agencies, such as WSG and E2I, in the longer-term development for job placement in Singapore. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, I thank Mr. Desmond Chu, the GPC chair, for his clarifications. Maybe I can address the second question first. I think search firms and WSG, as well as E2I, they play complementary roles. The search firms, or more broadly speaking, employment agencies, have well-established networks. They have within their networks companies whose recruitment requirements are well known to them, because on an ongoing basis, these employers reach out to the employment agents to help fill positions for a simple reason. They may not have a very large HR department with recruitment specialists. So the employment agencies have their own networks of hiring employers. The other benefits that I think the search firms and the employment agencies bring is that quite often they guide the job seekers on what aspects of their resume and skill sets ought to be emphasized when presenting themselves to the prospective employers. And this is very often the key deciding factor. Because of their in-depth knowledge of prospective employers' requirements, which sometimes go beyond what can be stated in a job advertisement, this insight enables the job seekers to review their own set of experiences and profile themselves appropriately. So I think in a well-developed landscape for job placement, the employment agencies can play a complementary role to WSG and with E2I. I think there's another value that they bring to the table is that quite often they will give very honest and direct feedback to the job seekers and help them to appreciate where their chances might be better. And this message is better delivered through the employment agents, I think, on some occasions. So there is a role for all the different parties. Now, to the question that Mr. Chu asked on the jobs transformation maps, it really depends on the sector. How many job roles will be identified systematically through the studies. In the case of financial services, for example, we identified 121 roles. And the value of the jobs transformation map, by the way, I should just add that not all of the sector agencies call them jobs transformation maps. We refer to them broadly as jobs transformation maps because that's exactly what they help the companies and the individuals accomplish jobs transformation. Whatever the sector agencies choose to call these studies, the key really is that when we speak very broadly about the impact of technology, we don't recognize sufficiently that the impact on specific industries and specific job roles depends very much on which technology we're talking about. So in the case of financial services, 3 key technologies will have an impact: artificial intelligence, robotic process automation, and advanced analytics. So the study looks specifically at the impact of 121 job roles arising out of these 3 technologies. In the case of logistics, it is 56 existing job roles, and the specific technology we're looking at is Internet of Things, on the AR, VR, augmented reality, virtual reality, and blockchain. Because these are the kinds of technologies that would transform this sector, and not quite RPA, AI, and and advanced analytics, so different. Now, in the process of doing this study, actually over and above the 56 roles that were identified, another 12 new roles that the industry will need were also identified. So the value of these kinds of studies is to look very specifically within a foreseeable time frame, technologies that will make a key difference to help the companies transform the jobs and to reskill their workers. To Mr. Chu's specific question, which are the other 12 sectors apart from human resources, financial services, and logistics that were completed, they are the wholesale trade, retail, food manufacturing, infocom and media, supply chain management, accountancy, in-house finance and accounting functions, construction, facilities management, land transport, environmental services, and tourism.
Mr. Pritam Singh.
Thank you, Chairman. Firstly, thank you to all the MOM office holders for replying to the cuts filed by my colleagues and myself. I have a question, and I also like to thank Minister of Manpower, Mrs. Josephine Teo, for responding to my budget speech on the capability transfer program. I think she gave some information with regard to how much has been expended on it so far. I believe the figure was $5 million. Just going back very quickly to when the program was announced in 2017, particularly the former Minister of Manpower, Mr. Lim Swee Say, stated, and I quote, this was in the budget debate of 2018, I believe, he said, there is tremendous, the scope for capability transfer is tremendous, high-tech to high-touch, MNCs to SMEs, domestic to export-oriented industries. And we were given some information about the funding cap per project. It was $300,000. And in exceptional cases, even more could be given if the particular project was worthy. To that end, I'd like to ask whether it would be correct to characterize the capability transfer program thus far as a scheme for which actually there is more to be desired, in view of the amount of money that the government has spent on it so far, because I would agree actually that there is a lot of scope and for it to support and improve the prospects of the Singaporean core. The second question I have is, again with regard to the capability transfer program, whether there are plans to improve its usage across industries tracked by the ITMs, because I would agree that there is a lot of scope for it to be a game changer, and I think we had an example of it in the MTI COS, where Minister MTI spoke about moving into a high-value bracket in manufacturing, for example, not just doing what other people are doing, but doing things which very few people can do. And here I believe the capability transfer program has a lot of scope. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, I thank Mr. Singh for his interest in the capability transfer program. Former Minister Lim Swee Say at the launch also made clear that the CTP is one of many programs that the government has to support capability development. Specifically, he also highlighted that it will complement the other programs that sector agencies already had in place. Now, of course, as the situation evolves, sector agencies may identify more specific programs that help their sectors to achieve better transformation. And they make a case to the Ministry of Finance. If the Ministry of Finance considers that those needs are better met by such sector-specific programs, then funding will be provided and the sector agencies will run it. The CTP itself is not tied to any particular sector, so in that sense, it is focused in its mission. However, it can apply across, sectors that are not covered very specifically by our agencies. So I think it is a useful complement. As to whether we would like a more take-up of the program, that's the reason why we extended it. But I should also caution that from time to time, the government re-examines all of its schemes of support to businesses, and streamlining happens on a regular basis. So this is part and parcel of government administration.
Yes. Mr. Yip Huang.
Mr. Chairman, I thank the Ministry for the replies. I have two separate matters for clarification. First is on the SG United traineeships. How many of those on the SG United traineeships were offered full-time employment in the industry that they were doing their traineeships in? Second, on senior employment, a lot of effort for senior employment is at a job matching level at the local level. Can the Ministry share plans more on this effort? Thank you.
Mr. Speaker, Mr. Chairman, to Mr. Yip's first question on the SG United traineeship programs, even at the start, we did not expect that the trainees must gain employment with the same company or within the same industry. The trainees, being fresh graduates, are at the start of their working lives. I think all of us have had that experience and benefited from being exposed to a variety of employment settings and different kinds of industries, different types of companies, big companies, SMEs. And this experience is really meant to try and help the trainees build up their resumes so that when they advance to the next stage of seeking a permanent job role, they are able to tell the prospective employer that, look, this is what I learned. And it matters less whether they go back to the same industry, same company, than the fact that they will be able to advance to a new job role. So in any case, most of the trainees have not completed their traineeships. I think what we will want to watch very carefully is whether they are able to move to a job thereafter. And that's what we will focus on. His second question with regards to senior employment is that seniors are just like all other job seekers. They have aspirations, they have specific job requirements, and a variety of ways exist in which to help them to get into a job. They can come to WSG, they could go to E2I, depending on what kinds of works they have been, what kind of careers they have been active in. Even search agents, employment agents, search agencies might be suitable avenues of support for them. As to local types of jobs, to my knowledge, actually, whether it is the CDCs or even some constituencies, there are attempts to try and make available such jobs. Again, I think they're complementary and certainly welcome in terms of providing more openings that seniors can consider.
Mr. James Lim.
Thank you, Chairman. I have a quick clarification question for Minister Teo in that when she said that the ministry would not close the door to suggestions like redundancy insurance, among other things, does that mean that there are, in fact, impending plans to set up a sort of a tripartite work group on, say, end-to-end jobs safety net, or to further study the kind of feasibility of unemployment insurance schemes as well as other end-to-end job safety net schemes. I mentioned this because when I stated that we have the functional equivalent of this end-to-end job safety net, it was including a number of elements, such as the COVID-19 support grant or the recovery grants or CERS, which at the moment are actually temporary. So it would be nice to understand the extent to which some of these schemes may have a longer shelf life.
Mr. Chairman, when the government says that it keeps an open mind on issues, that's exactly what it is. It keeps an open mind. It continues to look at the experiences of other countries. It considers studies that are done elsewhere, and also assesses on a continuous basis the changing landscape in Singapore and whether further action needs to be taken. At this point in time, we have a tripartite work group that is very, very intensively engaged in moving on lower wage workers. If and when there is a need to set up another tripartite work group, the member can be sure that it will not be done in secret. It will certainly be announced publicly.
Siow.
Thank you, Chairman. I thank MOS Gun for acknowledging the work of FDWs for being the larger ecosystem of support for our Singaporean women workers. The mental wellness of our FDWs is something that needs to be considered with care. Given that their workplace is also their homes, many FDWs find it hard to disengage from their work, especially if they are caregivers to the elderly and young in the households. In NTUC's FDW clinics with employers and employees that are helm for the labour movement, an often brought up point is the loneliness that our FDWs face, particularly if they are first-time FDWs and they come from different cultures and speak only their native languages. In such cases, would the ministry share with the House if there are plans to assist our FDWs in work-life harmony, and if there are comprehensive outreach being done by the ministry to ensure the wellness and settling in of our new FDWs?
Thank Ms. Yuan Ling, for reminding us that FDWs like us, also need work-life harmony, and mental well-being is as important to them as it is to us. So actually, MOM has a number of measures already to help foreign domestic workers adjust in Singapore. These include educating them by the Settling In program on matters such as Singapore's social norms, their employment rights, and stress management. In addition, MOM works with stakeholders, including NGOs, to provide recreational facilities and stress management courses. NGOs like CDE under NTUC and FAST each maintain a 24-hour helpline for foreign domestic workers. CDE also partners mental health advocacy organizations such as Silver Ribbon to provide counseling services for foreign domestic workers who need someone to talk to. Well, we recognize the importance of foreign domestic workers having opportunities to establish friendships, pursue recreational activities, and deepen ties with the community. So we work closely with partners, such as CDE and FAST, which I mentioned earlier on, to provide training, recreational spaces, social activities. In 2019, about 158,000 foreign domestic workers participated in courses, services, and activities organized by various NGOs. The wide range of services and activities available include befriender programs, affordable educational courses, counseling facilities, libraries, and gyms. And there are many opportunities for foreign domestic workers to enhance their work-related skills or pick up new skills for their personal development. FAST is building a new clubhouse that will be 10 times larger than their current premises with capacity of 5,000 people, and I'm looking forward to opening it in the second half of the year. We encourage our foreign domestic workers to utilize public parks and spaces as well, and adhere to the safe distancing measures imposed at these public places instead of gathering on public walkways where there may be safety and accessibility concerns. Thank you.
Mr. Louis Chua.
Thank you, Chairman, and thank you to the Ministry for your kind sharing. I've got two clarifications. I think the first is in regarding the LRIS, which Minister Teo shared. I recognize that this is something that has been in place, but it's been about close to 5 years since August 2016 when the plans were first announced. So I was just wondering if there's any specific timeline that Ministry could share in terms of when we can expect some of these details to be announced. And in relation to the cut-out, has the Ministry considered or is considering allowing CPF members to invest alongside the government's investment vehicles, since we do not really need to look very far in terms of the options of funds that members can consider. I think the second is in relation to parental care leave. This is something that the Ministry is actively looking at considering to implement in the near term to send a signal that this is no less of a need as compared to some of other leave provisions such as childcare leave or even annual leave. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, Mr. Chua had, during his cut, talked about co-investing, CPF members co-investing with, I think, our sovereign wealth funds. I'm not really sure whether he has fully thought it through, because in all investments, there are risks involved, and our sovereign wealth funds have to take a certain amount of risk in order to generate the returns. And on a year-to-year basis, sometimes even over longer periods of time, there is no sure win, no perfect guarantee. And so when we think of their good record of performance, we must also not forget that there are occasions where these investments do not produce the same returns as hoped. So that's something I think we always have to keep in mind. As to LRIS, what we were really trying to do is to create a product that will not be costly for CPF members to invest through, and to basically make it something that is passively run and also takes advantage of the long time horizon that you have for your CPF savings. As I explained in my speech, this is obviously not going to be an easy product to design. And I can only say that there is a Chinese expression, 慢工出细货. If you want very fine product, it does take a bit of time. So I beg his indulgence that I think it's more important that we do a proper job than to rush it.
Ms. Melvin Yong.
Thank you, Chairman. I have two clarifications for SMS Zaqy Mohamad. First, on workplace safety, I'm glad that the SMS agrees with my suggestion to upskill SMOs to become WSH representatives in their companies. The NTUC will work closely with MOM to push and facilitate this. Some safety officers have raised concerns that their hands are sometimes tied when it comes to improving internal workplace safety practices in their companies. They constantly worry that doing so will cause them to be blackmarked by their employers, as workplace safety is always seen as a cost center. They worry that speaking up may put their employment contract renewal at risk sometimes. I would like to ask if the ministry can better safeguard the interests of our safety professionals so that they can perform their roles and improve workplace safety for all workers confidently and with greater assurance. Second, I would like to ask the SMS to respond to my question on whether we can better track the effectiveness of our workplace mental health initiatives and the adoption of our tripartite advisory on mental well-being at workplaces through perhaps the annual surveys that MOM conducts.
Chairman, I start with, I thank the member for his questions, and I start with the mental health question first. Mr. Melvin Yong asked about the adoption of recommendations from our tripartite mental well-being at the workplaces, including EAP services, which I know the NTUC has worked really hard on. So since its launch in November, our partners and our mental health providers have reported increasing interest from employers in offering mental well-being initiatives at the workplace. And I think this is a very positive sign, given the current COVID-19 arrangements that we have. So as the economy recovers, we expect more companies to reprioritize their resources to more mental well-being initiatives. So besides NTUC, MOM is also working with employers and HR groups as well to promote the adoption of the tripartite advisory. And as suggested by Mr. Yong, we will track the adoption of the MOM surveys every 2 years, with the first occurring later this year. So especially moving on to his second question on the audit, that we saw, so the safety officers do. No, rest assured, I mean, we understand their roles as auditors, and it's the same as financial auditing too, where they have a fiduciary, and they have a safety responsibility, like the fiduciary responsibility that they have to report, that any risk to the safety of our workers. So there are two things that workers can do. They can use the SnapSafe app, which is available. Two, you can call the MWM hotline, which is at 6317-1111. Okay, so do call, and if you have any information in which we can look into. But I can assure members that following many of the incidents, we are extremely concerned of late, especially with contractors rushing to catch up after work stoppages last year. I think that's one risk that we saw. Second one is there is certainly manpower disruption, as I mentioned earlier, due to border controls and pandemic measures. So we need companies to really put in place adequate risk assessment measures to adhere to safe workplaces and ensure that when there's machinery, they're only operated by staff that are trained. On MOM's part, we are putting in place more technology for the industry to adopt, such as drones to replace workers from difficult high-rise inspections, so that makes their work safer. Two, fleet safety technology, for example, can improve situation awareness of drivers, and wearables too, that can monitor workers' health. And on our part, when it comes to enforcement, we have also been using technology to use behavioral insights to target riskier firms. So for construction, for example, MOM highlights to companies how their safety records fared relative to industry peers and calibrates our inspection frequency based on their standing. For manufacturing, transport and storage sectors, MOM uses big data to predict riskier companies and focuses inspections on them. So models are refined continually to improve our enforcement hit rate. And we've also started publishing wish learning reports, and also to the members' earlier point about safety training, we have also enhanced our mandatory safety courses for workers. So from 2022, mandatory construction safety training will need to include experiential elements that simulate high-risk situations, such as falls from heights, collapsing scaffolding, and crash by machinery, so that workers, especially in construction, can better understand the workplace safety and health risks at the construction sites. And from 2022, cleaners will also undergo mandatory WISH courses, which provides cleaners with skills to carry out their work safely. So, for example, addressing risks of slip and falls, as well as inhaling toxic fumes from detergents and working from heights. So these are some of the measures that we are putting in place to make Singapore a safer place for all workers. Thank you.
Leong Ma Wai.
Thank you, Chairman. And thank you, ministers and MOSs, for all the work that MOM is doing for the workers in Singapore. I have two questions. First, I would like the minister to confirm whether the Singaporean workers has been disadvantaged under the current employment regime, whereby a wage disadvantage is against Singaporean because foreign workers don't contribute to CPF. There's no quota on EP holders. There's no skills transfer requirement. There's no succession planning requirement. Is this a conscious trade-off that we have to make? Second question, given that the ministry has already done a lot of work on the PWM, and I appreciate the work that they have, the government has put in, and this House is also of a consensus that all of us should be helping, we should be helping the lower wage workers more. So why is it so difficult to take that one small step? Because we have already put in a lot of subsidies for the low wage workers. Just take the one small step to make it a blanket living wage or minimum wage. And then we can concentrate our effort and resources on upgrading our workers through the vocational PWM that the government has started. I think that is a very good step because we really have to upgrade the skills and the income of our higher wage workers actually. Okay, those are the two questions. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, I thank Mr. Leong for his acknowledgement of MOM's work and also for his support, I think, for extending PWM. He has asked the question, why don't you just take that small step? Actually, we took that big step in 2007 through the introduction of workfare. And this comes at no cost to the employers and therefore no disemployment risk to the worker. That step was already taken in 2007. I think first of all we have to recognize that. It is the broadest based support that we are providing to lower wage workers. It comes every month. It supports the lower wage workers, not only cash payouts, but also to build up their CPF. So that, like all Singaporeans, they have the prospect of not just providing for their families, but also providing for themselves in retirement. Workfare in 2007 was a big step. Let's remember that. To his question on whether we have disadvantaged Singaporeans, I'm not sure whether Mr. Leong was in here when Mr. Liang Eng Hua delivered his cut, which I thought was so sharp in pointing out that when you look at 2020, the tremendous trauma that our employment market went through, over the course of the whole year, what was the employment contraction? 170 plus thousand. Which aspect, which segment of the workforce contracted? Foreign workforce, 180 plus thousand. What happened to our resident workforce, local workforce? It actually grew, very modestly, but it grew. Which country can actually produce this, report card? And so, from that perspective, in what way has the local workforce been disadvantaged?
Ms. Janet Ang.
Chairman, let me declare that I'm council member of SPF. And, thank you for all the, the presentations and the speeches earlier on. And, of course, Minister Josephine, if I can tell you, my niece took a traineeship and then she found a job. So I'm sure her cohort who did that will be very appreciative. Now, may I seek a clarification with the Minister on the timeline for PWM implementation in food services and retail? Now, I appreciate the NTUC's call to do this in 2 to 3 years, and indeed, SPF fully supports all the efforts to uplift our lower wage workers, especially with workfare and PWM. Now, the issue is, of course, timing. Now, I think I shared the National Business Survey by SPF, so pardon if I repeat again. Among those negatively impacted, which comprise about 2/3 of the respondents, and majority are SMEs, 85% of the respondents are SMEs. 70% think that it will take more than a year to recover from the pandemic. And, the time horizon for global recovery is, of course, we all know is uncertain. And according to some global watchers, it could be as long as 4 to 7 years. I spoke to my McKinsey friends, and they've got a big scenario planning thing. The best scenario, maybe 1 year. Of course, their worst scenario is 4 years. Since we are in pandemic mode, I guess we should take the worst. It will be about 4 years. So while I would like to see our low-wage workers earn more, and believe me, I really want to see that. But it may be early for our companies recovering from disruption to take on additional wage hikes. So, in my view, keeping jobs ought to take priority over wage hikes at this time. I checked with some of the businesses. Many of the small businesses are still struggling, and with the DRC and if plus wage hikes, they're going to quit. So, our low-wage workers will only have wage if there are at least companies to work for. So, this is my dilemma. For those who understand the lingo, I'm having an Isaac moment.
Ms. Ang, you can come to the point.
So I appreciate that MOM has had the unenviable task of balancing multiple demands, and SBF and the business community has pledged in the Sustainability Employment Report in 2019 to support opportunities and progression for our workforce, especially the vulnerable workers and the low-wage workers. So I advocate continued dialogue amongst all members in the tripartite work group, on a timeline that can be a win for all. So speed with prudence. And so may I ask whether TWG will take my points into consideration? Thank you.
Chairman, I note there's time constraints, so I'm just going to keep this short.
Yes, please.
So first, I thank the member and SBF certainly for supporting the initiatives of our tripartite work group, and that's precisely why PWM takes a very sectoral approach in which we've just announced that we're setting up the tripartite cluster to study this for food and beverage as well as the retail sectors. We fully understand the challenges of the sector today, and that's why we've made a conscious effort to hold back by a year before we set up a tripartite work group to understand this. And rest assured, as I said in my speech, we will look at the different differences as well in the two sectors and the different business models that may occur. So even for the retail sector, we're also mindful that there are also threats from e-commerce, and therefore we're also looking at the whole sector as a whole. So these are adaptations that we've done in the past PWMs, and we will continue to do so to study and adapt to every sector as required. Thank you.
Mr. Desmond Chu, would you like to withdraw your amendment?
Chairman, I'd like to thank Minister Josephine Teo, the public office holders and Permanent Secretary of BECCAM, and a team of MOM officers for their ceaseless work over the last 14 months. They had been at the front lines of COVID-19, and most of them still are. We know that many challenges and long hours await them as Singapore seeks to recover from the pandemic and tackle the structural forces. For that, we want to place on record our appreciation for the MOM officers. On that note, Chairman, I beg leave to withdraw my amendment.
Is the honourable member given leave to withdraw the amendment? Aye. I think leave of the majority is given. The amendment is withdrawn. Question is that the sum of $7,075,047,900 for head S stand part of the main estimates. As many as of the opinion say aye. To the contrary, say no. I think the ayes have it. The ayes have it. The question is that the sum of $101,951,000 for head S stand part of the development estimates. As many as of the opinion say aye. To the contrary, say no. I think the ayes have it. The ayes have it.